What's up, cooks? Welcome to the Card Kitchen. I am the Card Chef, and today we are bringing to you another top 10 decks of the week, but this time we are looking at the NOEX version of tournaments. Basically, these tournaments are as explained in the description. It's NOEX. So basically, EX Pokemon are not allowed in these tournaments, and it has its own kind of tiny meta that has been created through Play Limitless TCG. And the way you can check that out is you go on Play Limitless TCG, you click on decks, you choose Pokemon Pocket, and then the format, you either choose standard or NOEX. So of course you click NOEX and you'll be able to see all the different decks that are played with their win rate and their meta share. So we're going to start it off with this deck right here, and it's Greninja, Snorlax, obviously playing Barry. So this deck actually was not played very much until the Godsley tournament. Godsley just had a NOEX tournament, and I think the majority of decks in that tournament were all Snorlax, Greninja, and it did very well overall. In the NOEX format, this deck has like a 70% win rate, has a total win rate of 14-6, so it hasn't been played that much. It's the only deck on this list that has less than a 1% meta share within the NOEX format, but it did do very good and was super duper strong. However, there are better versions of this deck with Snorlax. We'll get into them in a minute, but this deck is super good because first of all, Barry will allow your Snorlax, who already is a basic with 140 HP, be able to attack for 100 damage with just 2 energy as long as you play the Barry. We're of course playing Greninja, so with Greninja you can do 120 for just 2, and with Rocky Helmets, the damage output that your Snorlax will have will just completely increase time after time. And of course, because we're playing Greninja, it's a water Pokemon, and a Snorlax is a colorless, we are going to be playing water energy, and so therefore we can play Iritas to heal our Snorlax in the front. So not only does it act as a tank to get into your Greninja, but it also does a tremendous amount of damage. And then of course we're going to be playing Pokemon Communication to try and get into our Greninja as often as we possibly can, or more consistently. And then the Cyrus, of course, you're playing Rocky Helmets and Greninja, so Cyrus will be the Gust card of choice in this deck. However, the better version of this deck is actually the Magnezone Snorlax. In the Godsley tournament, the Magnezone, or I think it was Magneton, was actually banned alongside Misty and Rampardos. Those cards are just, I guess the community as well as maybe Godsley just thought those cards were way too strong to be playing in a tournament. They're like almost EX level strength, I guess. But basically this version is actually the standard version of Snorlax that's being played across the NOEX format. And of course we all know how good Magnezone is, and Magneton being able to ramp itself while you just manually put all the energy on Snorlax. Once you get 2 on there, you can play a Barry, then you play an additional third one onto your Snorlax, and then you can use your 1 Dawn in the deck to Dawn energy from Magneton onto your Snorlax to get 2 turns of attack in a row for 100 damage. You have Shaman to be able to heal all of your Pokemon for 10 damage, and then you're playing a split between Cyrus and Sabrina. This will help the deck out tremendously to get those points of those prize points. And then Togekiss is actually played quite a bit in the NOEX format, and it's basically because for just 2 energy you can do 60 damage, which isn't great, especially on stage 2, but with 1 Cynthia it's 110, and 110 is a very good amount of damage in a NOEX format when you're not up against EX Pokemon with a ton of HP. And then of course, even if you don't use Cynthia, the following turn your Overdrive Smash from your Togekiss will do an extra 60 damage. So you're already doing 120 on your second attack, or possibly even 170 with the Cynthia. So this deck is honestly probably a lot stronger in NOEX than it would be in an EX format. You're also playing Siglif as well as Mythical Slabs and Pokemon Communications to be able to get into your Togekiss super duper fast. So because you can get into your Togekiss super fast, even though it's a stage 2 and it only requires 2 energy, this deck obviously seems very strong. And then obviously Rotom being able to snipe something on the bench and then utilize Cyrus to bring it out and then just knock it out with your Togekiss is super duper strong. And then we actually have Wormadam, Skarmory. There's actually a lot of steel decks on here. A lot of decks are playing Skarmory. There's 3 decks on this, I think, that are at least playing Skarmory. So Skarmory already is very strong. You're going to be playing 2 Giant Capes, 2 Rocky Helmets in order to make sure Skarmory has 50 damage every single turn it's attacking, basically. And then you have Wormadam, who can just like get a ton of damage over time. And then we also have the one Adaman that can just basically allow your steel type Pokemon to stay on the board for longer. And then of course we have a Celestial Elder. We're only playing 4 basics, so basically you need the opportunity to be able to bring one of them back in case you're out of Skarmory, so, or even a Wormadam, I guess. So you want to bring a Burmy back so you can increase the chances of evolving into it again. Another double Gust, 1 Cyrus, 1 Sabrina. Potions to be able to heal your guys. Again, you're playing Adamants, Potions, Giant Capes to try to keep these steel types on the field for as long as you can. And then we have another Greninja deck. So Greninja, honestly, I feel like the most popular cards in this format across all decks are either Greninja, Skarmory, Magnezone, and that's pretty much it. But then there's also a couple of Snorlaxes. But definitely Greninja is an MVP of this. Skarmory and Magnezone are definitely MVPs as well. So this is a Greninja Origin Form Palkia deck. Origin Form Palkia is the only like real big basic water type Pokemon you could be playing in this right now. You could try something like the Articuno, but I don't think it's worth it. This card could actually, with a Misty on turn 1, like in our 18 trainer decks, you can just start with a Palkia and then a Misty and then potentially get a Heads and do 120 right off your first turn, which is super duper strong. I'm surprised this deck's only playing 1 Irida. That's kind of shocking to me, to be completely honest, because you would think you would play 2 in a Water Shell, but maybe this deck just doesn't need it. 120 HP on a basic and no EX is pretty good. And then of course, even if it's just 3 energy, being able to do 80 damage with your Greninja feels like an Articuno, to be completely honest. Yes, you're not hitting the bench, but for a NOEX format, it's pretty strong. And then we have another Skarmory deck, but this is really the Bastiodon deck. It's the deck that we saw last format of Standard before Triumphant Light, where Bastiodon Skarmory really did very well, even in NOEX. It was a very interesting deck that somebody figured out. It's because Bastiodon could basically stay on the field for as long as humanly possible, which is already super good against way stronger Pokemon in Pokemon EX. So obviously in NOEX format, it's going to be able to stay even longer because the damage output isn't as high. It's very similar in a way to the old Golem Druddigon deck, where you knew that Golem was going to be able to stay on the field for a very long time. Bastiodon basically has completely replaced Golem in that sense for that type of style of deck. And then we have actually Dragonite Druddigon, which is still doing very good in NOEX format. Basically, once your Dragonite is set up and online, you're going to be able to sweep the game. Like, let's just be completely honest. You do need 3 prizes, and so that means you do need to knock out 3 Pokemon, but it's actually easier to knock out 3 Pokemon, most likely in a NOEX format, than it would be to knock out 2 Pokemon, one being an EX and one being a non-EX, in a standard format with EX Pokemon. So of course, we all know how it works. I don't think I have to explain that very much. Druddigon with Rocky Helmets in the front, get a ton of free damage while you build up your Dragonite in the back, with Communications to get into it quicker, Leafs to get into it when you need to get into it, and then Iridas because we're obviously playing water, so you're going to be able to heal a ton as well. This deck is probably extremely strong. And then we have the top 3 decks, the first one being this Magnezone, believe it or not, and Skarmory with 1 Arceus. Again, it's one of those situations where, first of all, Skarmory allows you to have a tremendous early game being super duper aggressive, and then Magnezone allows you in the late game to just continuously hit for 80 damage over and over and over again, whilst basically not ever being able to be knocked out as while your Arceus is on the field. Because again, the damage output for NOEX Pokemon in NOEX format is not super high, and because it's lower and you already take less damage because Arceus is on the field and the resilience link from Magnezone, you're going to be able to stay on the field long enough to make sure that 80 damage per turn eventually just wins you the game. I'm surprised we're not playing Adamans either. However, it is hard to find space in this deck because you are playing so much Pokemon. But then the better version of this deck is, of course, the Magnezone from I forget which set, but the Electric Magnezone, basically. So you're able to, and this deck has already existed as well previous to obviously this format, and did very, very well in Standard until the new set of Triumphant Light came out. And then now this has kind of, I guess, been demoted to just being a NOEX deck, to be completely honest. But again, the exact same thing. Skarmory super duper early game, and then Magnezone for late game. This is usually played with a Heatran. This player, I guess, chose to decide to play a Registeel instead. And maybe it is a bit of a difference, and maybe even a little bit better, because maybe you don't need that 110 damage from Heatran to be super successful, when 90 might just be enough, especially since Heatran attacks itself for damage. But then, of course, we have Rampardos. This, in my opinion, is most likely the best deck in the game. It has a 20% meta share, basically. I think it's like 19.58% or something. So for all intents and purposes, 20% meta share, which is absolutely huge. And obviously it makes sense because this deck is already played in Standard format. Sorry, my camera keeps going out of focus. I don't know if it's been doing it the whole time. But anyways, Rampardos is just super duper strong. And that's probably why Godsley banned it from his tournament, because it basically feels like an EX on a no EX body. With Lucario, Rampardos, we know how strong it is. Of course, this deck's not going to be playing Sudowoodo because there's no EX Pokemon in this format. One Marshadow and one Hitmonchan. This deck is just super duper strong. Like, let's just be completely honest. And obviously, it's going to be the number one deck in the format. It's basically the number one format, one of the number one decks in Standard format, to be completely honest. So that is it for the top 10 decks of the week for no EX format. Let me know if you like this list or not, and whether you want to continue to see me cover no EX. I always cover the Standard format once a week and do top 10 lists every single week for that on usually Sundays or Mondays. And now I feel like I kind of still want to do this. I've done this before, but it's very few and far between when I do it. But anyways, leave a comment in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and share. Join my Discord and my Twitter. And as always, keep cooking.